Today I have something pretty special for you.
Today I have something pretty special for you.
Today I have 7 signs you'll be an atheist one day. But first,
me. This is the Mentionables response to the 7 signs you'll be an atheist one day. We're looking at sign number 7. This is the last video in the series. Let's take a
without
look.
further ado, let's get started. 7 signs you'll be an atheist one day. Number 7, you're a little obsessed with debating atheists.
You spend a little too much time debating atheists. Once trivial and routine things such as scrolling through your social media newsfeed have now become an obsessive hunt for someone or something that you disagree with. People who are confident in their belief or who have no doubt in their faith don't pay any attention to anything atheists have to say. These conversations trigger you. Now, why is that? Well, if we're 100% honest with each other, it's because you have doubts too. And that's okay. Our brains are hardwired to be curious, to ask questions, and to seek the answers to those questions. Religion tries to extinguish those sparks, instead dampening it with verses from ancient books telling you to trust and obey and that faith is all that you need. When you confront us, you're really confronting yourself. When you demand that we give you evidence that there is no God, you're really just grasping at evidence for your own. When you try to convince us to believe, you're really just trying to convince yourself. Hearing us talk about being skeptical, asking questions, pointing out contradictions, that's like pouring gas on that mind. We engage you because we see those sparks, curiosity, and doubt. We are not your enemy. Instead, think of us like a flint. We engage your arguments, waiting, hoping for that one strike that sends a spark into that curiosity and doubt, igniting the flames that burn away that barricade that religion has put up, freeing you to finally seek the answers to the questions that you have and not some ancient book.
Okay, so before I get to my response to this particular sign, I'd like to talk about this series for a moment. The one thing that I'm constantly asking myself when I view the various answers or in this series is, who's the audience? I mean, the title tells you who the audience is. It's 7 signs that you might be an atheist one day. So they're talking to Christians. So you notice they've covered the gamut of pretty much any attitude that a Christian might have towards atheism. Oh, you avoid the hard questions, you're going to be an atheist. Oh, you engage the hard questions, you're going to be an atheist. Oh, you're trying to prove religion right using reason, you're going to be an atheist. Ooh, you debate atheists, you're going to be an atheist. So basically, the message of this particular video series is you're going to be an atheist. But if you notice the approach that they're taking in every one of these videos, it's a overt attempt to try to instill doubt in the Christian who's watching it. So, for instance, the last one that we did, where it's science, you're using science to prove Christianity. The guy is then telling you the pathway that you need to use to investigate your religion. Read the Bible. This is the one that they, don't use the Bible as your guide, but read the Bible and see the historical context, and that'll make you an atheist. In this one, the only reason you're engaging atheists and trying to argue with them is that secretly you have doubts. And underneath it all, you're sort of already an atheist. You just haven't realized it yet. And then if you're avoiding the hard questions, it's because you have doubts and you're afraid to engage them. And if you really are obsessed with the hard questions, then you have doubts. You're going to be an atheist. So, I mean, the message of the entire series is that, hey, you're an atheist already. Underneath, you have doubts. If you're watching this video, you got doubts. You're going to be an atheist. And so I see this video almost as less of an instructional series on those trends which lead to atheism, which is what I've been trying to give during this series, but rather as a proselytizing to try to bring you over to atheism by trying to grab any kind of psychological condition or attitude that you have towards atheism currently and try to demonstrate that this is going to turn you into an atheist. Now let's look at this particular sign. Okay, so the claim here is that an obsession with debating with atheists online is an indication that you're on the slippery slope to atheism yourself. Is this the case? I don't see any evidence for that. So, as I've mentioned in practically every video in this series, I'm engaged in a case study of Christians that have become atheism. And in none of these case studies, at all, none, have they ever been obsessed with debating atheists online. Now, that's not to say that there was no engagement with atheists in any of these case studies. In several of them, the person claims to have engaged in apologetics. Okay, so there's that. And then in a couple of them, there's a personal relationship with an atheist, which is usually friendly. So a family member or a friend or a boyfriend that was an atheist. And there was conversation. But honestly, none of them cite this relationship or, engaging in apologetics or debate with atheists as a factor in their movement towards atheism. In a number of them, it's interaction with other Christians that they'll cite as their slide towards atheism. So, let's talk about online debating. Typically, online debates, you see three different pathways. The first is not so much debating, but exposure to other ideas online. In the study that they've done with this, exposure to other ideas online can tend to lead towards a kind of a synchronization. That is, that the person is exposed to these other ideas and they begin to tinker with their own ideas to try to compensate with these other ideas they're exposed to. And this study is where I borrowed the term tinkering from, which is adjusting your ideas to fit new ideas that you come across. In those instances, you don't really see an abandonment of their religion so much as a changing of the religion to try to cram other ideas or other viewpoints into their own viewpoint. So there's that. But that's not debate online that you see that happening in. It's exposure to other ideas. The second is kind of a trolling type thing. In trolling, and I wish I could say that Christians do not engage in trolling, but that's evidently not the case. It's not an attempt to engage with other ideas. It's an attempt to get a reaction from people. So any kind of debating that goes on is just kind of a poking of the bear. You say outlandish things to try to get a reaction from the person. And in studies on this, you see that people who engage in this kind of behavior tend to be narcissistic or sadistic or even psychopathic sometimes, where they don't really care about the other person. They like getting that reaction. And no, these kinds of discussions don't tend to lead to adopting the other viewpoint. The third is more of kind of an online debating. And honestly, in these instances, what you see is kind of a doubling down on your own viewpoint, kind of a hunkering in, and you, if anything, move more in the direction of the idea that you adopt. And this is in religion, it's in atheism, it's in political affiliation. All of these, when you get into these debates, if you're challenged by ideas you don't have an answer for, one just goes and finds some article online or some person online that kind of backs their opinion, and they tend to move further in the direction of their beliefs. So that's the third. So in none of the studies that I've seen has debating with atheism or debating any other viewpoint that you disagree with ever led you to adopt that viewpoint.
So this last supposed sign that you might be on the road to atheism was kind of bizarre. Because all it did was it took a general psychological state that a lot of people find themselves in that are very not specific to religion, and instead focused it in on religion when it's actually a very widely applicable idea. I don't want to say silliness, but just kind of oddity of this is that it's very easily turned around. I have heard, probably even said myself, things like, atheists that are debating with Christians, they're really just seeking the reason why atheists find the need to seek out and engage with Christians and to debate and argue, to make YouTube videos about it, is because, well, you're really trying to convince yourself that is the answer. And so this doesn't actually add up. Anyone of any kind of persuasion can do this. Anyone who's in a situation where you're a little, insecure about your belief or your position. See, but that's not the only possible option. Some people just like to argue, and they don't care what it's about. And so they pick something they're passionate about. Not because they're wrestling with doubts and they're trying to seek answers, but because they believe it's true and they just like to argue. Some people actually have a passionate burden for other people. And there's an actual angst and sorrow there in knowing that you don't believe that you need Jesus and you won't accept it. And so that's why they argue and debate. There's some people who maybe they teach the stuff that they have that. They're not necessarily trying to argue for you, but they're polishing up on their own ideas so that whenever they talk to someone who's actually interested in hearing what they have to say. There's more options on the table for someone who likes to debate this issue than you're questioning, you're seeking, you're really just trying to convince yourself. There seems to be some projection going on here, I might say. So this is just really it's not a sign at all. So if you're out there and you find yourself debating with atheists, it doesn't mean that now you're on the road to become an atheist yourself. There's all kinds of things. And even if it is because you're insecure in your faith, you're insecure in your convictions, okay. That doesn't mean you'll be an atheist. Maybe you'll actually go look at the arguments and the evidence and see that atheism doesn't add up. Maybe that by engaging with atheists, it's not that you're going to open your mind to realizing that God doesn't exist, but you're actually going to see the weakness of atheist arguments, that there is no evidence for atheism, that whenever you come down to it, which position actually has the force to withstand scrutiny? Well, it's certainly not atheism. So just because someone likes to engage does not mean that they are on the road to atheism.
Now, actually, this has nothing to do with the reliability of evidence. And to imply that this creates atheists is just plain wrong. You see, when people have strong confrontation against their beliefs, it actually reinforces those beliefs. Many psychologists, including Galen Rucker, Nyland and Reifler, and Leon Festinger, have done studies that show this to actually be the case. So Kyle is right here. Advocacy can often come from those with more doubts. However, scientific research actually points to him being outright wrong in terms of the outcome. With that said, I'm not sure why people who devote a great deal of time to advocating for atheism want to use this to make a point for them. So, before I close, let me put this together a little bit. I'm going to paraphrase some of these reasons for being close to becoming an atheist. You see, you might be an atheist soon if you avoid hard questions, are arrogant enough to think that your listening skills are truly superior to everyone else on the planet. You think in black and white or literal and metaphorical with no room for actual textual criticism that may involve both. You love scientism, not science. You think you can only use empirical science to prove things. You don't know why others believe the way you do, and you really don't care. And you're obsessed with debating those you disagree with. So let me rephrase this. If you follow this train of thought, you may already be an atheist. Just kidding, of course. Or am I?
And now for the last one. The last sign that you will be an atheist. That you're a bit obsessed with debating atheists. Obsessed. Okay, team. Remember sign numbers 1 and 2? Those were that it's a sign that you're going to be an atheist if you do not ask the hard questions, and it's a sign you're going to be an atheist if you do ask the hard questions and engage with criticism. And now it's a sign that you'll become an atheist if you debate with atheists. If you engage the staunchest of your critics, you're going to be an atheist. And what does it mean that you're obsessed? What about atheists who are obsessed with debating Christians? Is that a sign that they're on the narrow path to heaven? I mean, here you have a guy who has an entire podcast. I mean, he dedicates his time and he's devoted to discussing and debating and arguing with and against religious people and religious ideas. It's like what he does, and it's what he's known for. I mean, does he really not see the total irony of this? And notice the subjective psychologizing that he engages in. If a non-religious person engages in these debates, it's because they are reasonable and curious. But if a religious person does it, it's because they have doubts and they're obsessed and they're on their way to atheism. Because don't you know religion dampens and extinguishes our natural curiosity? I mean, the special pleading and just inflammatory rhetoric of this one is pretty patently obvious. Is he engaging in curiosity and exploring and understanding opposing views? It's hard to think that he is if he has such categorically negative views of religious beliefs that they're counterproductive to reason and truth in the first place. Notice the gross violation of sign number 2 about being open rather than hostile and dogmatic. Remember, the Bible is the one that says that God invites us to reason, Isaiah 1:18, that God's people suffer when they lack knowledge, Hosea 6:4, that we believe based on knowable acts of Jesus, John 14:11, that we can know based on eyewitness testimony of hundreds of people about the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, 1 Corinthians 15:1 and following, and so forth. The Bible does not endorse blind fideism apart from evidence. It doesn't try to stifle or extinguish reason or curiosity. This likely reflects Kyle's own background in a very modern iteration of fundamentalistic anti-intellectualism that anything intrinsically necessary about religion, whatever that term even means, is somehow stupid. Again, notice once again that this is not really a reasonable or philosophically or even scientifically robust argument from Kyle. What this is, once more, is really just a platform for a kind of self-congratulatory soapbox preaching to the atheistic choir. Look how great and reasonable us atheists are. It basically is, hey, if we assume all the caricatures and misconceptions, misrepresentations of theists, of our atheistic memes about how false and stupid religion is, then look how false and stupid religion is and how great atheism is. They engage us in the noble task of engaging the barricades that religion has put up to free us from dogma, because they're skeptical and critical and love evidence. But when theists engage them, we are obsessive and angry and view them as enemies. I mean, the absolute special pleading of this whole argument and this entire segment is just almost laughably bad. And so many of the online pop atheists, the Mick atheists, just eat this kind of thing up. I'm constantly reminded that this is what passes for reason with so much of this online atheistic community. This kind of in-group, echo chamber dogmatism is honestly what they would say is a reasonable engagement of religion. I continually think to myself that if they had better arguments, they would use them. But no, this is this is really the best they got. This is everything they have. This is their big deal. This is their magnum opus. If you're an atheist watching this and you think that these 7 signs are great examples of arguments against religion or Christianity, best of luck to you, friend. I'm not sure we're able to reason with you then. But if not, if you see the paltry nature of these 7 signs, then jump on in. Help refine those who are the public face of atheism. This is what the legacy of atheism in the early 21st century is going to be. People aren't going to be turning to Nagel or Rus. They're not going to be listening to those lectures by the thousands. They aren't sharing Waylenberg and Pigliucci. In the same way that I try to encourage the Christian community to do better than Comfort, Ham, and Feuerstein, go out there and engage your fellow atheists in the atheist community and encourage them to do better than this. If not, this reality is the best arguments that most of your community will be able to advance. If there are better arguments, they would use them.